What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my FanDuel single-game breakdown for the Monday Night Football game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all of our other content goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman so you can get updates to the sim results as we get closer to lock. Plus, I'll be on live before lock tonight to even break it down further. I don't know why I said even, but we're going to keep going because this is the first time I've recorded something in 4 days. Now, one last thing. Be sure to let me know in the comment section, who are your favorite options at MVP and at Flex for tonight's slate? The high-level stuff. Average fantasy points in the optimal winning lineup, 93.8. Average salary spent, 59,000. 2.5 Ravens, 2.5 Browns. It's dead even. Ravens 3-point favorites in Cleveland with a 45.5 point game total. It's time to dive in to the MVPs. Now, as is the case with pretty much every time the Ravens are on a showdown / single game slate, Lamar Jackson on FanDuel is going to be at the top of the heap. He's 17K. Shows up in 49.8% of all optimal MVP lineups. 50-50 shot, it's going to be Lamar. You don't see guys with this much of a share of the fantasy performance. This isn't surprising. There's no change to his salary by using him at MVP. It's the same. And he's going to have the highest projection no matter what. He's a threat throwing the ball. He's a threat on the ground. He's really difficult to avoid. If you're playing a Lamar lineup, 50% of the time, he's probably going to be the correct MVP. What you're probably looking for is something a little bit off the beaten path, because anybody could recommend Lamar Jackson. Now, let's be clear here. You should be recommending him. He's great. If you need the second best guy, it's obviously going to be Baker Mayfield. $2,000 cheaper than Lamar. 20% of the time shows up in the MVP spot. So it's going to be one of the quarterbacks about 70% of the time. Baker's coming in about 20%. After that, it's basically two guys and then full-on randomness chaos. Nick Chubb, 14,500, shows up in the optimal about 6.5% of the time. I think he's just a hair too expensive in order to make that salary. You can just spend another $500 and go to Baker Mayfield and have a much, much higher floor. The guy that I actually like going to, 12,500, Jarvis Landry, shows up in the optimal about 9% of the time. That $2,000 savings over Chubb is monstrous in this spot. And I think his outlook isn't all that far behind Chubb. You can get there sort of either way. Chubb is definitely going to be a higher projected player. I've got him about 1.9 fantasy points ahead of him currently. But that's not enough to offset the $2,000 gap in salary. So if I'm ranking these guys, it's Lamar, it's Baker, it's Landry, then Chubb, and then cross your fingers and hope you get the other guy right. Because if you're picking someone outside of that group of four, you're going to need some luck. Now at the flex spot, this is absolute craziness. It's either super flat around 33% or we're taking some pretty big fades. Now, I expect Lamar Jackson to be wildly overowned in the flex spot. I talk about this a lot. I would much rather have him in the MVP. I think it's really hard for Lamar to be in the optimal lineup and not be in the MVP spot. 17,000 is so much money. That's a really weird spot for him to actually make it, but not be the best at the top end. So I'll assume I'll be light on Lamar, but we'll talk about that in fades. Guys that stand out the most to me at the flex spot. Oddly enough, $8,500 Cody Parkey looks pretty good. There's not a lot to pay down for. You can go to someone like Willie Snead, who shows up about 20% of the time. Donovan Peoples-Jones, about 15% of the time. There's just not a lot of spots to save some salary. So I like going to Cody Parkey. I definitely like going to Cody Parkey more than I like going to Justin Tucker. After that, maybe a little bit of Baker Mayfield, 15K, shows up in the optimal 35% of the time. Then you take a bit of a step down, you get into these low 30s guys. J.K. Dobbins at 11.5, Kareem Hunt at 11K, Mark Andrews at 10.5, Marquise Brown at 10K. All of these guys are right around 30% to be in the optimal. Rashard Higgins, also 9,500, 29.3% chance of being in the optimal. This is quite possibly the most difficult flex spot I've seen for any single game slate we've had this season. From the time you get to Baker to the time you get to Justin Tucker, that's a range of $6,000. Every one of those guys looks basically the same relative to their salary. The pricing is super efficient. I don't see any clear, obvious errors in the pricing. There's no gaps. Like Gus Edwards at 8,500 doesn't look all that great, but that's because there's 10 guys above him that are priced perfectly. This is going to be a tough spot. We want to pay very close attention to our public ownership projections. Without that, you're going to have a hard time finding the leverage spots on this slate. That will make the difference. But for right now, I truly can't find anything that just stands out. So I'm going to recommend Cody Parkey at 8,500. That's going to be my favorite thing that I see at flex. I think that's the easiest way to be a little bit different on this slate. And after that, I'm going all the way up to the top, 15K, Baker Mayfield. They are my top 2 options at flex on FanDuel tonight. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't have public ownership yet. That's a Monday tradition. As I'm looking around, fades are going to be tough to come by. I assume Lamar Jackson at the flex spot will be easy. I don't get the sense that this is going to suddenly be the week that people play the high-priced quarterback in the flex a little bit lighter. So I will be light on Lamar in the flex. I'll mostly just be taking that and funneling it to the MVP spot. The Nick Chubb area of 14.5 in the flex, also a little bit higher than I would like, still shows up in the optimal 28% of the time just in the flex spot. So it's not like I'm saying just fully get away from him. I could see a scenario where he's significantly more owned than that number. It'll be easier to come in light. Similarly, I'd rather take a couple extra shots at Jarvis Landry just having a bonkers day and needing to be in the MVP spot than grabbing him a ton in the flex spot. That's another, Landry at flex, I think, is another spot where we see him go over owned. So I'm going to try to lightly avoid Chubb and Landry, come in a little bit below the field, try to redistribute through the Hunt, Andrews, Marquise Brown area of the salary tier. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. That is my FanDuel single game breakdown for Browns and Ravens. I'm excited for it. One last time, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And the biggie, follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. You don't want to miss these sim updates. I'll have something out in that like 6 to 7 o'clock window. Plus, I'll be on Live Before Lock with Adam Scher, breaking it all down for a quick 30 minutes before we turn it over to our Live Before Lock crew. Thank you guys for joining me. It's good to be back, ready to get back into the swing of things. I don't know when the next individual slate is. The NFL schedule is crazy. It could be tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday. Games are happening all the time, but keep your eyes peeled because I'm definitely going to have one whenever we have another big single game slate. And keep your eyes peeled for the DraftKings version of this video. If you're playing on both sites, I break it down twice. Good luck tonight, guys. I'll talk to you again the next time I do this.